out of Louisiana that could change the entire landscape of abortion law in America. It is a case about women's health and safety.
Louisiana has been used as a testing ground for anti-abortion policies for decades. Our government has passed 89 unnecessary restrictions.
Had anybody told me we would be sitting here today getting ready to go before the Supreme Court in the admitting privileges case, I would not have believed them.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court, this case is about respect for the court's precedent. Just 4 years ago, the court held in Whole Women's Health that the Texas admitting privileges law imposed an undue burden on women seeking abortions.
I really find it offensive that when you regulate in the area of women's reproductive health, that you're considered against women.
I don't want abortion to be legal. I would rather it not be. But as long as it is, you better believe I am going to be fighting to protect the women who are accessing abortion.
Abortion opponents, they have to convince the court that there's actually a serious danger posed by abortion to women and that it's not just a litigation strategy.
It is alarming and it is unacceptable that in the year of 2020, there are still states that are hell-bent on preventing women from getting access to reproductive health care.
When you see at the Women's March and things of that nature, you see the big signs that say, I thought we were done with this. But really, not long after Roe v. Wade, we started really moving backwards. I'm Kathleen Pittman. I'm the administrator at Hope Medical Group for Women in Shreveport, Louisiana. I've been the administrator here for 10 years, but I've actually worked at the clinic for 27. A typical day at Hope Medical is phones.
This is Joel. How can I help you?
We see patients 6 days a week, all 6 days for the consent sessions, 3 days for the procedures as well.
You see trap laws going back all the way to the 1970s and certainly to the 1980s. They've, I think, gained new life in recent years because anti-abortion groups have emphasized arguments that abortion hurts women. And trap laws fit well in that strategy because the idea is that abortion is unsafe, so you need additional layers of regulation to make sure that patients aren't injured as a result of abortion.
We don't want anybody fainting. The laws and the actions from the state over the years has already created, for some women, insurmountable barriers. There are child care issues, there's transportation issues, time off from work or school. The majority of women we see here already have one or more children at home.
In Louisiana, we have a law that actually says that if a person elects to have a procedure done in an outpatient clinic, that doctor must have admitting privileges. And we realized that it did not apply to the area of abortion. When I looked at it, I said, why are we lowering the standard of health care in Louisiana for women in the area of reproductive care and keeping it high for men? And so as a woman, it became extremely important.
For next week, but I might need to, We went back and did a thorough search, and at the time when we went to court, we could come up with 4 cases that we had transferred to hospital. 4.
We filed this case in 2014. We were able to block it at the trial court. The district court judge in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, held a trial and found that the law was unconstitutional because it would make it very difficult for people in Louisiana to access abortion care while providing no health and safety benefits.
Of course, the state of Louisiana appealed to the Fifth Circuit, which has a long history of being very, very they say anti-abortion. I think they're anti-women, actually.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catherine Glenn Foster, President and CEO of Americans United for Life.
Americans United for Life formed in the early 1970s. They've been one of the major players on the anti-abortion litigation scene. And since the 90s, they've been probably the primary proponents of these arguments that abortion hurts women. A lot of their strategies are centered on that argument.
Isn't the case before us just a matter of common sense? What's at issue here? Is it really so contentious that states should be able to protect women and protect life through basic health and safety standards?
We have been involved in this case since day one, from the bill itself, which is very closely aligned with our model bill on the issue, providing support, providing messaging, mooting the Louisiana Solicitor General, helping with testimony. And Steve Aden, our Chief Legal Officer and General Counsel, was co-counsel at the trial and appellate levels before he came to AUL.
There was a sense in which up until Hellerstedt, lots of states were interested in those laws. And then after Holman's Health versus Hellerstedt, there was a sense in which they were probably unconstitutional. What's really interesting about Americans United for Life strategy is that the group really never gave up on these laws, even though doctors had questioned the science behind them, even though the Supreme Court had struck them down. So it goes to show how much that group believes that these are the restrictions that will help erode abortion rights.
Thank you for joining us.
Last fall, I was debating Kitty Colbert, who argued Planned Parenthood v. Casey for Planned Parenthood. She said, "This is the court that will overturn Roe." Now, is it? Maybe. Is it going to happen this year? I don't think so. I would be delighted, but I would be rather surprised. But with that said, this is a chance for the court to revisit all of the precedent that has gotten us where we are today and say, how did we get here? Let's take a look at Roe. Let's take a hard look at Roe. Let's take a look at Casey.
Thank you. I cannot believe it's coming tomorrow. I cannot believe it.
So much lead up to get us to this point.
6 years.
Finally get our day in court.
I think at the end of the day, if the true story is told about this bill, and just not it being a pro-life bill, but a pro-women's health bill.
Exactly.
If people around this country begin to realize that the abortion providers are generally, most of them are not OBGYNs, right. If they really talk to the women that have had complications, right. They would understand it. Right. And it would be just common sense.
You know, we can't access any other right if we don't have the right to health care, if we don't have the right to life.
I am just hopeful tomorrow we're going to get the outcome that we are looking for.
And setting the standard for the nation.
For the nation.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just it.
Hey guys, it's Stephanie Stone with Students for Life, and we're out here at the Supreme Court tonight. Aren't we excited? Yeah! We're doing our overnight, and it's going to be an amazing night. Follow us.
We are spending the night here. We are kind of holding down the fort because there will be dueling rallies tomorrow between the pro-life and the pro-choice side, and it will be primarily a competition for press. I've been involved with the pro-life movement in general for about, I'd say, 4 years. I honestly read Supreme Court briefs in my free time. I think it's the most fascinating thing. And this case in particular, I think, is very interesting because it's not so much about the abortion issue purely, it's more about how much we want to protect women. If we end up winning this case, people will argue that the Planned Parenthood versus Casey case contradicts with this one, and that one may have to be revisited. And then, you know, once that one's revisited and that one's unraveled, comes Doe v. Bolton, then it comes Roe v. Wade. So yeah, it is an incremental technique in unraveling.
The Supreme Court hearing its first major abortion case since 2016 today, at issue whether Louisiana's tough new abortion restriction violates the Constitution. Now, that state law says the doctors performing abortions must have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital.
Hi, how are you, Keisha? Yes.
You have your ID?
You have your ID? I do.
If we don't challenge these stupid trap laws, then we may as well pack up and go home. We're all tired, but we're still fighting.
We are here to support women. And we have an abortion industry here that is arguing for their right to abandon women at the door. And that is completely unacceptable.
I found myself brought into Doc's office
His only concern was payment, saying each week that I waited, the price would in fact go up.
Right now, I pray for the day that abortion becomes illegal in this country. But right now, we're sitting under Roe versus Wade. And Roe versus Wade says that abortion is legal. But it also said that states have a right to implement laws for the health and safety of their constituents in this area. So I'm legislating what I believe to be constitutional, and that's through the health and safety of women.
It's not the merits of the case. It's not the facts of the case. Instead, it is that Trump has added two extreme ideologues to this nation's Supreme Court, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh.
Louisiana says that many of its restrictions on abortion are about protecting women and children, but we know that's not true because Louisiana has one of the worst maternal mortality rates in the country. It has one of the worst indicators for child health in the country. And so instead of actually enacting laws and putting into place policies that would protect women and children, they are just trying to take people's decisions away.
My understanding of hospital practice today is you got to stay alive only if somebody sees patients. Because if they don't see patients, they're of no value to the hospital.
Justice Sotomayor, I think the record shows that they can get privileges. They did get privileges, and there's nothing in the bylaws that prohibits them from it being.
But your own expert, Dr. Marier, testified. It is unlikely that a doctor who, like Dosek, would, quote, probably not, end quote, be able to obtain, quote, active admitting and surgical privileges, end quote. Now, that was your expert. And the basis of that and various other things, the district court finds that he didn't have to apply to all the hospitals because there was no point because your expert said he probably could not get them.
People who are opposed to abortion genuinely believe that abortion causes all kinds of problems, from breast cancer to psychological distress. So the breakdown is really profound, right? It's not just one about people being dishonest to get an outcome in court. It's, I think, about people getting their information from different experts and relying on different sources of evidence and kind of fundamentally distrusting medical authorities and the government. As if the court overruled Roe, that won't make things better or move us closer to compromise, I don't think. I think we're moving further apart.
A major ruling from the Supreme Court today on abortion, the court striking down a law in Louisiana.
6 years, 6 very, very long years. To say we're elated hardly begins to come close to what we are feeling.
Today is a tragic day for Louisiana women, for Louisiana in general, but especially for the women who deserve more. It's a disastrous moment in American history for the independent judiciary.
We are just delighted with this huge win. It vindicates what we have said all along, which is that this is the identical law that was found unconstitutional. But we also know that unfortunately it's not going to stop those hell-bent on banning access to abortion.
Anyone who reads this and thinks that abortion rights are safe now is just not paying attention. What you see is that we were wrong to think that there was a very firm conservative majority in place to overrule Roe immediately, but we weren't wrong to think that Roe was in peril. So I think conservatives have the same opportunity to dismantle abortion rights that they always had, but they also have a chance to blow it, and they might if they're too impatient.